Let's kick it off with the debate that we all watched, we all listened to in horror.
Yeah, fair.
Joining us now, let's kick off the program with Meghan McCain, the daughter of the late, great John McCain. Meghan, nice to have you back on the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be talking to you guys again, Bruce and Gaydos. And, I'm actually flying to Arizona tomorrow, and I'm not thrilled to hear that there's an air quality problem.
Oh, yes.
I heard that in your news thing. So, other not great news.
And the air's
thank you for having me on.
115 degrees, too. There's that quality issue. Oh, well.
Well,
I'm used to it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Meghan, how surprised are you how cognitively impaired Joe Biden was last night and currently is, and that's probably the way it's going to be? How surprised are you?
So I was surprised at the degree, just as bad as it was. But I live in Virginia, right outside Washington, D.C., and there are rumors that have been very loud for probably, I would say, the past 3 or 4 months about a lot of things that allegedly is happening in the White House and allegedly is happening with President Biden. I actually heard a story today that the debate prep from sources through my friend Mark Halperin, the journalist, that he had very bad debate prep, that he was actually even worse during his debate prep at Camp David, and that people that are very close to the president, this actually wasn't as surprising. I am not close to the president, so I was very surprised. And I'm sure much like both of you, my phone and social media have just been exploding ever since. And this really does feel like a historically unprecedented moment in our lifetime.
Well, Meghan, you know more than most of us that there's a team of people around a politician, a candidate, especially a president. They had to have known. This couldn't be a surprise to all of them. I feel like there's some negligence going on.
Well, I think what's so hard at this second is just we were told by Karine Jean-Pierre just last week that any questions any of us have about all these videos that are floating around social media of, Biden at the Juneteenth concert standing there with his mouth open while everyone else is dancing around him looking vacant, not being able to find his way to and from his stages, to and from places that he's speaking. We were told that they were deep fakes or AI generated. That's something that came out of the mouth of Karine Jean-Pierre, who, by the way, I think should be absolutely removed from her job as press secretary immediately, given the extraneous lies she's been telling the American public. And we have all been talking about it. I mean, I think conservatives especially have been talking about it. And, I said this earlier this morning in another interview that I know what it is like to be around someone whose brain is not functioning in the way that it should. My dad had brain cancer, so there's a specific reason, but there are certainly things that I think anyone with, any sentient person watching the president can tell. And look, it's absolutely heartbreaking. I was extremely emotional last night and upset watching it because above all else, whatever you think of his politics, and I certainly, have my criticisms, no one wants to see our country like this and our president in this state. And it's also putting a burden on us as Americans to monitor his health, which is not something I'm capable of doing, nor should be put in the position. But I think his staff, the people who have aided and abetted this for so long, are heinous and duplicitous and really an extreme danger to the American public at large, because our enemies are watching this. I mean, the last thing I said to my husband last night was, I hope that I don't wake up and China has invaded Taiwan, because they see how weak we are.
Meghan McCain is joining us on KTAR. So, Meghan, I listened to the debate on our station last night, and I had my thoughts that he was awful. I went home and then I watched it on TV, and it was worse. And here's why. You can hear that he couldn't have many coherent thoughts. But the other thing, when you watch the TV, the split screenshot killed Joe Biden. He had his mouth open all the time. He looked confused. His eyes were glazed over. And so you didn't, obviously, when you listen to the radio, you don't know about that. But when I went and watched it on TV for the second time, it was what he said or didn't say or couldn't say that crushed him. That was only part of it. It was the split screenshot of what, did he not know he was on camera? Because it was
horrible
brutal.
debate prep.
It was brutal.
I mean, I completely echo what you were saying. Like I said, I had a very hard time watching it, and I think it's the worst debate performance probably ever. And I think what's fascinating is, last night, for anyone that was watching TV, which I was, on places like CNN, MSNBC, these are very liberal anchors who were basically all calling for him to step down, including people like Van Jones and Joy Reid. But this morning, there's been a tide turn where President Obama and President Clinton and a lot of major figures in the Democratic Party are just saying it was a bad night and it's nothing compared to President Trump. Right before I got on with you guys, the New York Times editorial board is calling for President Biden to step down. So there's definitely, obviously, a fracture within the Democratic Party of whether he should step down or not. But I just don't know how the American public is expected to be put in a position where this man could possibly be functional in 6 months, let alone in 4 years, when he's 86. He's 81 right now. At the end of his second term, he'll be 86. I mean, there's a very, very serious problem for the American public.
Yeah, I don't think there's any argument to that whatsoever. I think we're all left with kind of the question, and you being kind of there in D.C., in the orbit, if you will, Northern Virginia, close enough. I'll let you slide. So now what? I mean, is there even an option?
You got to replace him.
That the D's could replace him?
So the gossip I'm hearing is that Jill Biden, our first lady, would basically rather, like, there's just no scenario on the planet where she would allow her husband to step down and not continue running for president, that the Biden family is 100% would basically, like, rather watch America burn to the ground than have him step down. It's just not something they are going to let happen. Whether they are the last say in all of this, I think remains to be seen. We need to, pay very close attention to major donors, other major political figures aside from President Obama and President Clinton. There's still a lot of other people in play. This might not completely be up to them. I actually am finding it harder and harder to see. Democrats aren't like Republicans, respectful to your listeners who are Democrats, but Democrats really fall in line. Republicans are rowdy and we fight with each other, and there's lots of fracturization, and we're a much more complicated party. Democrats, there's one note, it's one dictator, and they do what they say. So the question I have is if as many people like President Biden and President Clinton come out and say, nope, it's Joe and that's it, will they put up a Gavin Newsom, a Gretchen Whitmer? I thought last night that would be the case. This morning and this afternoon, I'm finding it a little less feasible that it's going to happen. And they sent President Biden out on, a rally to say, I'm old and I messed up, but I'm not a liar like Trump. But the problem for the White House right now and for the Democratic coalition is that he was already losing. My election predictions were that Trump was going to win somewhat easily. And there's not the Baghdad Bob propagandistic spin is only going to get you so far, particularly with independent voters and center-right and center-left leaning people who are just not comfortable with this kind of, again, I'm not a doctor, but clear some kind of mental decline happening in front of our faces, having their finger on the nuclear codes.
She's Meghan McCain. We sincerely appreciate your time today and your insight into this, and have a safe flight back to Arizona.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me, and good luck covering this for the next 3 hours. I know it's very depressing for everyone.
It is. Thanks, Meghan.
Yeah, not a lot of joy in Mudville. Yeah, appreciate it.
And it is depressing because no one wants to see our president like that, and that was horrific last night.
Joe Biden has served this country. Yeah. He's been a public servant. He's done his job.
Yeah, it was.
You got to know when to say goodbye.
I don't think he knows when to say goodbye. I don't think his wife is helping him either.
No.
Thanks for watching Outspoken with Bruce and Gaydos. Tap to watch more from KTAR News and click the button in the middle to subscribe.